Good morning, students. I hope you all are doing well. Today, I will discuss the last chapter of Unit 5. I'm not saying today of the course because none of you reminded. It is very strange. इसका मतलब ये है कि आप लोग पढ़ते नहीं हैं. None of you reminded that we are left with one more poem, that is a prayer for my daughter from Unit 2. So, I will say that today we are dealing with the second last chapter of the course, and tomorrow I will deal with a prayer for my daughter by W.B. Yeats. Now, this chapter, this essay from Unit 5, which says living in a globalized world. This essay is very apt as far as the title of the Unit 5 goes, the title is The Brand Expands by Naomi Klein. And who is Naomi Klein? Is a Canadian author, social activist, filmmaker known for political analysis and criticism of corporate globalization and of corporate capitalism. She first became known internationally for No Logo, that is her documentary film. I would not like to get into it, but yes, for you it is important to know that she's a social activist and a person who criticizes corporate globalization and corporate capitalism. जब हम corporates की बात करते हैं, what are corporates? Corporates are big companies, large business houses which try each and every method of commercialization, each and every ways, each and every thing that they can do to what? For having more and more of commercialization. Now, title says the brand expands. Now, how the brand expands, what she is talking, is she talking about the brands we know today? Yes, she's talking about them. She's talking about the brand culture. Now, it is a very common thing. When it had started around 2000, in the year 2000, when she wrote the book No Logo, first she says that having a brand, having a logo was a thing of very great importance. And how and why, let us say, globalization kind of increased these branding things, right? And how the sponsorship that used to take place, how it has spoiled everything. In the very beginning of the chapter only, it is given that The Brand Expands by Naomi was about branding culture. Logos no longer just represent a brand, they are now a culture, a lifestyle. प्रेजेंट सिनारियो में 2020 में अगर 5 years बैक की भी हम बात करें तो वी पीपल can very well understand about what she is talking about, the branding system that has come up, how these corporate houses, for the sake of commercialization, they are making use of these actors, I should say heroes, जिसमें heroines भी आती हैं. ठीक है, अब हम feminism के world में even the female is a hero, right? So they are used to propagate the brand, and some of these actors, heroes, they have themselves created their own brands. Talk of Deepika, who has All About You. Talk of Hrithik Roshan, who has HRX, and many other actors. The branding system has grown so much. पहले तो सिर्फ logos की बात करते थे. She used to say that people used to see what logo you are wearing, which brand cloth you are wearing. But now time has suddenly change. She says that logo has been, it has become a culture and it has become a lifestyle. The little story tells at the beginning of the article about being obsessed with brands when she was only 8. So she begins explaining things to us with the help of a story when she was just 8 years old. So let us read the text. Now you will find a very heavy vocabulary has been used, and there is a huge mention of many people and brands of which the notes are given at the back of your book. Of course, I will deal with whatever will come here, but then if something is missed out, you can always check the notes that are given at the back of your lesson. Okay, because it is not for comprehension, it is only for question answers. Obviously हमारी knowledge के लिए भी है, it is a very good essay, but at the same time what you have to do, you have to understand what Naomi is exactly trying to tell you. Her main reason behind writing this is that the love for brands has now become a culture and it has become a lifestyle, right? So let us see. Since the crocodile is the symbol of Lacoste is a brand, most of you must be knowing it, we thought they might be interesting in sponsoring our crocodiles. So this was said by Silvina Gomes, commercial director of Lisbon Zoo, on the institution's creative corporate sponsorship program March 1998. तो sponsorship क्या होती है आपको पता है? क्या करते हैं sponsorship में? You are sponsored by a big house, maybe a bank or a corporate house, for propagating your brand. So I was in grade 4 when skin tight designer jeans were the be all and end all, and my friends and I spent a lot of time checking out each other's butt for logos. Nothing comes between me and my Calvin's jeans. Brooke Shields assured us. Now Brooke Shield is an actress, an American actress who is branding or who is propagating these Calvin Klein jeans, right? Assured us as we lay back on our beds, Ophelia style, and yanked up zippers on our jawed ache jeans with wire hangers. We knew she was telling no word of a lie. At round the same time, Rumi, our school's own pint-sized Farrah Fawcett, used to make rounds up and down the rows of desks, turning back the collars of her sweaters and polo shirts. So Farrah Fawcett was again an actor, and this girl who was in the class of the author, she used to turn back, the collars, or like abhi to jeans ki baat ho rahi hai, and of the shirts and sweaters, to check what brand, what logo. Pehle to logo the, baad mein brand ban gaya. So she used to keep on checking the logos, what people are wearing. Polo shirts क्या होती हैं बताएं? Collar वाली shirts, polo shirts. It wasn't enough for her to see an alligator or a leaping horseman. It could have been a knockoff. She wanted to see the label behind the logo. We were only 8 years old, but the reign of logo terror had begun. So wearing a brand, wearing a logo was very, very important. That is what the writer means when she's saying it had become the reign of logo terror had begun. About 9 years later, so how she began the essay? She began the essay with this, that when she was in grade fourth, and now 9 years later, I had a job folding sweaters at an Esprit is again a brand, clothing store in Montreal. Mothers would come in with their 6-year-old daughters and ask to see only the shirts that said Esprit in the company's trademark bold block lettering. बड़ी कॉमन सी चीज़ है अभी, हम इसको बहुत अच्छे से समझ सकते हैं, को रिलेट कर सकते हैं. यंगस्टर्स की बात करें तो ज़्यादा है. हेयर तो शी इज़ टॉकिंग ऑफ अ वेरी स्मॉल चाइल्ड, अ 6-year-old child. So you can imagine that even a 6-year-old child knows that he has to buy something from the brand Esprit. She won't wear anything without a name. Unbranded नहीं पहनेंगे. The moms would confide apologetically as we chatted by the change room. It's no secret that branding has become far more obtuse and intrusive by now. Obtuse, which is found everywhere. Labels like Baby Gap, newborn, imprint brand awareness on toddlers and turn babies into mini billboards. Mini billboards, they know the brands, they know what they have to buy. My friend Monica tells me that her 7-year-old son marks his homework not with check marks, but with the little red Nike swooshes. Now swooshes, of course, it is the sound which, swoosh, as we say when a fast moving train or a car crosses you, the sound it makes is the swoosh sound. So that is the sound of speech. And Nike, in Greek mythology, Nike was the winged goddess of victory. And of course, we know it is a brand too. Okay. Until the early 70s, logos on clothes were generally hidden from view, discreetly placed on inside of the collar. तो early 70s में जो logos सामने दिखते थे ना, जैसे Lacoste तो अभी भी polo shirts पे दिखता है, right? Crocodile you can see. But in the 70s, she says, it got inside the collar. Small designer emblems, that is symbols, did appear on the outside of shirts in the first half of the century. But such sporty attire, sports clothes, was pretty much restricted to the golf courses and tennis courts of the rich. So branded Lacoste clothes were specially used in sports. Even now they are used in sports. People wear it as a brand symbol too. But earlier, she says, it was confined only to golf courses. In the late 70s, when the fashion world rebelled against Aquarian flamboyance over here is bold, brilliant and showy. But Aquarian flamboyance is the way out styles of the hippie era of the 60s, which had celebrated the corning of the age of Aquarius in the musical air. You just understand, it talks about being bold, brilliant and showy. The country club wear of the 50s became mass style for newly conservative parents and their preppy kids. Ralph Lauren's Polo Horseman and Izot Lacoste's Alligator, two different brands. Polo Horseman, one brand, and Lacoste, the other brand, both sports brand. And then what happened, she says, they were started being used by the parents. The small kids were having an inclination for these. Escaped from the golf course and scurried into the streets, dragging the logo decisively onto the outside of the shirt. So jo logo tha, the alligator of the Lacoste, the crocodile, it came on the front of the shirt. These logos serve the same social function as keeping the clothing price tag on. Everyone knew precisely what premium the wearer was willing to pay for the style. By the mid 80s, Lacoste and Ralph Lauren were joined by Calvin Klein, Esprit, and in Canada, Roots, yet another brand. Gradually, the logo was transformed from an ostentatious ostentatious बनावटी जिसको हम कहते हैं, something artificial kind, to an all active fashion accessory. I will repeat it again because this is something important. What he's saying, the logo then became, after some time it says, the logo was transformed from an ostentatious affectation, from something being artificial to an active fashion accessory. So the logos, they became a fashion accessory, remember this. Most significantly, the logo itself was growing in size, ballooning from a 3/4 inch emblem symbol into a chest-sized marquee, a large tent, जहाँ पे parties organize कर सकते हैं, that is called a marquee. This process of logo inflation is still progressing, and none is more bloated than Tommy Hilfiger, we all know, who has managed to pioneer a clothing style that transforms its faithful adherents into walking, talking, life-size Tommy dolls. Now, it simply means that small children who are wearing the brand Tommy Hilfiger. It's faithful, mummified in fully branded Tommy whirls. Mummified, to make it into a mummy. You know the mummies, the mummies from the Egypts. These scaling up of the logo's role has been so dramatic that it has become a change in substance. Over the past decade and a half, decade कितना होता है? 10. Century होता है 100, right? Decade and a half. Logos have grown so dominant that they have essentially transformed the clothing on which they appear into empty carriers for the brands they represent. The metaphorical alligator, in other words, has risen up and swallowed the literal shirt, because you can see the alligator of the brand Lacoste on the polo shirts. This trajectory mirrors, trajectory तो वैसे curved path होता है ना, but over here it means the progression. The large transformation our culture has undergone since Marlboro Friday, sparked by a stampede of manufacturers looking to replace their cumbersome production. Stampede क्या होता है? A sudden panic rush, जिसको हम बोलते हैं भगदड़ मचना, है ना? That is what is a stampede. Apparatus with transcendent brand names and to infuse their brands with deep, meaningful messages. By the mid-90s, companies like Nike, Polo, Tommy Hilfiger were ready to take branding to the next level. No longer simply branding their own products, but branding the outside culture as well by sponsoring cultural events. ठीक है, तो अभी तक what Naomi has talked about, she has talked about the liking of the people for logos, right, which was more of a culture. After the logos went back to the collars, for people it became what brands they are wearing, and from these from the branding thing, the concept of logos became part of the sponsoring cultural events. Cultural events were sponsored for the propagation of brands. Try to understand. They could go out into the world and claim bits of it as brand name outposts. For these companies, branding was just a matter of adding value to a product. It was about thirstily soaking up cultural ideas and iconography, visual images, and symbols that are used in a work. I will repeat again this line. It was thirstily soaking up cultural ideas and iconography that their brands could reflect by projecting these ideas and images back on the culture as extensions of their brand. Extensions over here simply means expansion. Culture, in other words, would add value to the brand. Remember that. For example, Onute Miller, senior brand manager for Tequila Souza, explains that her company sponsored a photography exhibit by George Holmes because art was a natural synergy with our product. It collaborated, or it kind of confined with each other. Confined also you will not get. Art was helping in the progression of their brand, in the commercialization of their brand. That is what they mean when they are saying art was a natural synergy with our product. So what has Naomi trying to tell you in this particular paragraph? She is trying to tell you that now what happened, sponsorships kiska shuru ho gaya of the cultural events, right? And here art was being used for propagating brands. Branding's current state of cultural expansionism is about much more than traditional corporate sponsorships. The classic arrangement in which a company donates money to an event in exchange for seeing its logo on a banner or in a program. Rather, this is the Tommy Hilfiger approach of full frontal branding applied now to cityscapes, music, art, films, community events, magazines, sports and schools. It is more like a hoarding, hoarding समझते हैं ना आप लोग? To propagate brands. If you see all around Solon, how our jewelers are propagating their brand, one particular jeweler for that matter. And not just jewelers, other brands also, hoardings are used to let people know that things are coming into existence. This ambitious project makes logo the central focus of everything it touches. Not an add-on or a happy association, but the main attraction. So, what is Naomi saying? That first, sponsorship क्या होती है? If I am sponsoring, you are doing an event for that matter. Maybe you are you are having a welcome function for the freshers, right? And I'm a bank and you approach me to sponsor you. I will give you sponsorship. I will give you, say for example, around 1 lakh, maybe 50,000 rupees. What will you do for me in return? आप बदले में क्या करोगे मेरे लिए? You will put the banner of my bank in your program. उसको sponsorship कहते हैं. ठीक है? And this was what used by brands for their expansion. They used sponsorship, they organized cultural events where they used the actors for the propagation of their brand names. This is the simplified version of the essay. This is what Naomi is trying to tell you. Basically, focus kya hai Naomi ka? What is she trying to tell you? That how this brand thing has become part of our culture. Let us not talk about Indians. She's talking about Americans, of course. How it has become a culture for them. How it has become a lifestyle for them. और हम अपनी बात करें, Indians की बात करें तो everything that is Western has to be part of our lifestyle, isn't it? हमारी conditioning ऐसी नहीं है, but I think social media and let us say the other media, news and everything, at least our youngsters would know this better, isn't it? Even we are not too old, but then the youth of our country, I would say, is up to certain level westernized, right? And of course, we too are doing what Naomi is saying. We too are part of this branding culture. We too have made these brands our lifestyle. Advertising and sponsorship has always been about using imagery to equate products with positive cultural or social experiences. What make 90s style branding different is that it increasingly seeks to take these associations out of the representational realm and make them a lived reality. So, the goal is not merely to have a child actors drinking Coke in a TV commercial, but for students to brainstorm concepts for Coke's next ad campaign in English class. Now, a very recent thing that has happened जो मैं इसके साथ को-relate कर सकती हूँ. I wonder if you know about it. There are many online apps, schools coming up. Byju's हो गया, White Hat हो गया, and many more are coming up, right? And what they are saying that they will teach you to decode. Your 6-year-old child will start learning to decode. When your child doesn't know the basics, what is the use of such things? Tell me that. Why? Because we are in a pandemic, such things are cropping up. It is very good, but there has to be a level. By just making the child do it, आप क्या कर रहे हो? You are killing his creativity. You are not letting him grow internally. एक जो creative zest उसके अंदर है, that is somehow killed. And when you have people like from the Bollywood stars who are branding these schools, branding these online apps, then of course it definitely has an influence on it. Now, एक family conditioning का भी असर होता है. My kids don't know who is Shah Rukh Khan, right? But then there are houses where people watch too much of TV, or there are big families where not much care is taken of the children, and they know many things. It is not I'm saying that it is a good thing my kids don't know, but I'm trying to tell you that children who know this would definitely say कि मुझे देखना है, मुझे करना है ये जो बता रहे हैं Byju's, what they are telling, or White Hat for that matter, right? And this is what Naomi is also trying to tell you here, that when a child actor is propagating a Coke commercial, it will definitely have an influence on the children studying in the school. It transcends logo festooned roots clothing. Roots again is a brand, to conjure memories of summer camp, and reaches cut to build an actual roots country lodge that becomes a 3D manifestation of the Roots brand concept. Disney transcends its sports network ESPN, a channel for guys who like to sit around in sports bars screaming at the TV, and launches a line of ESPN sports bar complete with giant TVs. The branding process reaches beyond heavily marketed Swatch brand of watches and launches Internet Time, a new venture for the Swatch group, which divides the day into 1000 Swatch beats. So many things added to a watch, which of course some people are fond of using. The Swiss company is now attempting to convince the online world to abandon the traditional clock and switch to time zone free branded time. Let us take our example. How many of us are wearing watches Or how many of us wear a watch to see the time? A watch is now merely not a fashion accessory. That is what I'm trying to say. The effect is not always the original intention of advanced branding is to nudge the hosting culture into the background and make the brand the star. It is not to sponsor culture, but to be the culture. They are not sponsoring the culture. Brand in itself is becoming a what? A culture, a lifestyle. And why should not it be? If brands are not products but ideas, attitudes, values and experiences, why can't they be culture too? एक और चीज़ यहाँ बार बार आ रही थी. These lines, they are saying that the lines and the words that are used. Right now, I'm not able to remember, लेकिन जैसे policies की ad आती है ना, जिंदगी के साथ भी और जिंदगी के बाद भी. So there are certain brands and certain brands who too have some taglines. And using those taglines, what do? They try to attract their buyers. They know that who are our target persons, young, adult or old or toddlers. Obviously kids, small kids, they don't know. Babies, of course, they don't know, but their mothers know very well the brands that are there. So those taglines are used. As we will see later in the chapter, this project has been so successful that lines between corporate sponsors and sponsored culture have entirely disappeared. But this conflation has not been a one-way process, with passive artists allowing themselves to be shoved into the background by aggressive multinational corporations. Rather, many artists, media personalities, film directors, sports stars have been racing to meet the corporations halfway in the branding game. Michael Jordan, we all know. Puff Daddy, Martha Stewart, Aston Paz, Brandy and Star Wars also we know. जिनके बारे में आपको नहीं पता, the notes are there at the back. Go through them, who they are. Star Wars, of course, it's a series of a serial that is there. Now mirror the corporate structure of corporations like Nike and the Gap. And they are just as captivated by the prospect of developing and leveraging their own branding potential as the product-based manufacturers. So, what was once a process of selling culture to a sponsor for a price has been supplanted by the logic of co-branding. The branding of the actor with the brand. A fluid partnership between celebrity people and celebrity brands. बहुत अच्छे से समझ सकते हैं आप, how these celebrities, obviously they are paid too much for branding these brands, I should say. The project of transforming culture into little more than a collection of brand extensions in waiting would not have been possible without the deregulation and privatization policies of past 30 years. In Canada, under Brian Mulroney, in the US under Ronald Reagan, and in Britain under Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher, former Prime Minister of UK, So what did they do? They lowered the taxes on the corporate. They lowered the corporate taxes. A move that eroded the tax base and gradually starved out the public sector. It drastically affected the public sector. As government spendings dwindled, lowered down, schools, museums, broadcasters were desperate to make up their budget shortfalls and thus ripe for partnerships with private corporations. It also did not hurt that the political climate during this time ensured that there was almost no vocabulary to speak passionately about the value of a non commercialized public sphere. What was commercialized? Which sector was commercialized? The corporate sector was commercialized and the public sector was losing upon. This was the time of big government, bogeyman, and deficit hysterias when any political move that was not overtly designed to increase the freedom of corporations was vilified as an endorsement of national bankruptcy. If that would have carried on, the nation would have become bankrupt. It was against this backdrop that, in rapid order, sponsorship went from being a rare occurrence into an exploding growth industry, picking up momentum in 1984 at the Los Angeles Olympics. At first, these arrangements seemed win-win. They were good, they were successful. The cultural or educational institution in question received much needed funds, and sponsoring corporation was compensated with some modest form of public acknowledgement and a tax break. And in fact, many of these public private arrangements were just that simple, successfully retaining a balance between the cultural event or institution's independence and sponsors' desire for credit, often helping to foster a revival of arts accessible to the general public. Successes like these are frequently overlooked by critics of commercialization, that how the collaboration of the public sector with the corporate sector can help both these sectors to grow, right? So such success was overlooked by critics of commercialization, among whom there is an unfortunate tendency to tar all sponsorships with the same brush, as if any contact with the corporate logo infects the natural integrity of an otherwise pristine public event or cause. While elevating the corporate sponsorship simultaneously devalues what it sponsors, the sporting event, the play, the concert, and the public television program become subordinate to promotion because, in the sponsor's mind and in the symbolism of the event, they exist to promote. Everything is happening for the sake of promotion of the brand. In the public's eye, art is yanked for its own separate and theoretically autonomous domain and squarely place in the commercial. Every time commercial intrudes on the culture, the integrity of public sphere is weakened because of the obvious encroachment of corporate promotion. This picture of our culture's lost innocence is mostly romantic fiction. So, something that appears to be not really true, a romantic fiction. Though there have always been artists who have fought fiercely to protect the integrity of their work, neither the arts, sports, nor the media have ever, even theoretically, been protected sovereign states that McLister imagines. Cultural products are the all-time favorite playthings of the powerful, tossed from wealthy statements such as Gaius Silenus Magnus, who set up the poet Horace in a writing estate. So Horace, who is a popular Roman poet, he too was set up by Gaius Silenus. And from rulers like Francis I and the Medici family, whose love of arts bolstered the status of Renaissance painters in the 16th century. जब हम history of English literature पढ़ते हैं, we will study Renaissance. And what is Renaissance? Renaissance is the revival of learning. The revival of what kind of learning? It may be art, it may be literature, and of the works that have been done by great Greek and Roman writers. तभी इसको कहते हैं revival of new learning. Though the degree of meddling varies, our culture was built on compromises between notions of public good and the personal, political, and financial ambitions of the rich and the powerful. Of course, there are some forms of corporate sponsorship that are inherently insiders. The tobacco industry's co-railing of the arts springs to mind, but not all sponsorship deals should be so easily dismissed. Not only are such broad strokes unfair to worthy projects, but perhaps more important, they can prevent us from seeing changes in the field. If all corporate sponsorship arrangements are regarded as equally compromised, it becomes easy not to notice when the role of the corporate sector begins to expand and change, which is precisely what has been happening over the past decade as corporate sponsorship has ballooned. It has increased in size, ballooned from how much? $7 billion a year to $19.2 billion in 1999. When sponsorship took off a stand-in for public funds in mid-80s, many corporations that had been experimenting with the practice ceased to see sponsorship as a hybrid of philanthropy. Philanthropy, who is a philanthropist, a person who is who's very humble, who's always ready to give, जिसको हम परोपकारी कहते हैं ना, philanthropist. Hybrid of philanthropy and image promotion, and began to treat it more purely as a marketing tool, and a highly effective one at that. As its promotional value grew and as dependency on sponsorship revenue increased in the cultural industries, the delicate dynamic between sponsors and the sponsored began to shift, with many corporations becoming more ambitious in their demands for grander acknowledgements and control, ever buying events outright. Molson and Miller-Beer, as we will see further on in this chapter, are no longer satisfied with having their logos on banners at rock concerts. How things change now, these brands, corporates, they do not want their logos on the banners. Instead, what they want, they have pioneered a new kind of sponsored concert in which the blue chip stars who perform are entirely upstaged by their hosting brand. So these logos on the banners have been replaced by these blue chip stars. And while corporate sponsorship has long been a mainstay in museums and galleries, when Philip Morris owned Altoids Mints decided in January 1999 that it wanted to get into the game, it cut out the middleman who was taking more money. Rather than sponsoring an existing show, what the company did, the company spent $250,000 to buy works by 20 emerging artists and launch its own curiously strong collection, a traveling art exhibition that plays on the Altoids marketing slogan, Curious Strong Mints. Chris Peddy, Altoids brand manage, said, "We decided to take it to the next level." They wanted to propagate it more and more. So the most insidious effect of this shift is that after a few years of Molson concerts, Pepsi-sponsored Papal visits, Izod zoos, and Nike after-school basketball programs, everything from small community events to large religious gatherings are believed to need a sponsor to get off the ground. August 99, for instance, saw the first ever private wedding with corporate sponsorship. So this was the worst thing that could happen, that a sponsorship was being done in a private wedding. This is what Leslie Sarwan, author of The Sponsored Life, describes as symptom number one of the sponsored mindset. We become collectively convinced not that corporations are hitching a ride on our culture and communal activities, but that creativity and congregation would be impossible without their generosity. So, what is the writer exactly trying to tell you? That how the brands have ultimately um, changed their shift from getting sponsored their logos in the events to a shift to a private wedding for that matter, or maybe to a event that is taking place in a school or a museum or somewhere, right? Now, what actually the writer is trying to hint in the end, that the most dangerous effect that she's saying it can be seen, is that small community events to large religious gatherings are believed to need a sponsor. Anything that is happening, any kind of event, whether it is religious or it is a private wedding or a school function or anything, a sponsor is needed. And when a sponsor is needed, then it is very obvious that they will definitely propagate your brand. As a result, what will happen? Their corporate lineage will increase. They will get more and more financial gain. Commercialization for them will obviously up to a great level, right? Now, what is the final conclusion? Naomi is simply trying to tell you that how the brand culture changed, and eventually the final and the most important thing is that these brands, they have become part of our life. Pehle beginning mein when she started the essay, she's trying to tell you that it was more of a show off, but then how the show off became a part of certain aspects as far as the public sector was concerned, or when the government was giving them the benefits of the tax, how it affected the public sector, why the public sector collided with them, and how eventually this brand culture, this brand expansion became part of our culture, and it has become a significant and an integral part of our lifestyle. That is what she is elaborating upon. Now, because she is a critic on what globalization, she criticizes that. So it is very obvious criticism of corporate globalization and of corporate capitalism. So how these brands used, let us say, the government, or how it used the people, the citizens in general, is what Naomi is trying to criticize in this essay. And she is not saying that it is our failure, but then she is trying to focus on this fact that how impactful or how powerful these corporates have been for the sake of expansion of their brands, for the sake of sponsorship of their brands. Okay, this is what the brand expands is all about. What you have to remember is the main aspect that Naomi is focusing on, that how brands affect, let us say, a toddler, let us say youth, let us say the adults, right? What these brand corporates are using for the sake of their commercialization. What they are using sponsorships of the cultural events. And Naomi has given a historical background as to focusing on the fact that these these sponsors not only left these cultural events, but they also used private weddings and certain religious functions and school programs for the propagation, for the expansion of their brand. Okay, that is all that is the main idea on which Naomi is trying to focus on, right? The very apt title, The Brand Expands, how the brands have finally expanded, how they have become part of our culture, how we all have made it our lifestyle. Okay, that is all. Now we are left with a prayer for my daughter. Very soon I will deal with it. Okay, that is all for this. Take care. Of course, doubts are always welcome. Thank you so much. Take care.